Stem cells is a huge buzzword. I was in a conference about a month ago. As soon as I said stem cells, everyone's ears and eyes perked up. So it's a buzzword, but let's start with PRP. PRP stands for platelet-rich plasma. We draw your own blood, we spin it down on a centrifuge, and then we basically extract out healing tissues or healing parts of the blood and inject it back into an injury site. But stem cells really set themselves apart because not only do they decrease inflammation, improve function, decrease pain, but the big kicker here is they can actually rejuvenate tissue.
Welcome to Look Good, Feel Good with Matt and Amy McKinley, the podcast where we bring you expert advice and honest, real talk on health, wellness, and feeling your absolute best. From hormone optimization to aesthetics and everything in between, we're here to help you live your best life. Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to Look Good and Feel Good with Matt and Amy. I'm Amy.
Howdy, I'm Matt.
So today we're talking about something we see every week in our clinic, arthritis, and how we're helping people avoid surgery through regenerative treatments such as stem cells. So Matt has a background in orthopedics. Tell us a little bit about your background and what arthritis is and kind of that direction.
Okay, gosh, looking back, I guess half of my life on this earth, 25 years, has been directed towards osteoarthritis, orthopedics, and now regenerative medicine. So arthritis, to break it down into simple terms, it's degeneration of the joints. And what will happen is cartilage over time will break down. Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's not. And it can also be from previous trauma or injury. So as that cartilage breaks down, the joint space, which may have been like this at one time, it narrows down. And if it wears all the way out, it can get to the point that it's bone on bone. So brief overview of arthritis. I am super passionate about treating it, not only arthritis, but all orthopedic conditions. I want to tell you about kind of my personal shift from what I did for 22 years to what I've been doing for the last 3 years. Okay. So for 22 years, I grew up in the orthopedic world. I worked with great people all the way from Fargo, North Dakota, yes, Fargo, to Pocatello, Idaho. And I worked with Mayo Clinic trained surgeons in Fargo. I worked with Iowa trained surgeons in Idaho and Mayo Clinic fellowship trained surgeons in Idaho. So great people. I love them all, and I credit those guys to what I learned. I had some great mentors. But what we learned and kind of the way orthopedics rolls is you diagnose an injury, you treat it, oftentimes with corticosteroids, which we know now can only help with pain, but does not help the tissue. It doesn't help the tissue regenerate.
It breaks it down, doesn't it, ultimately?
It does, yeah. Ultimately, in a joint, especially, it will break down tissue. I saw that all the time in surgery. We'd go in and operate on a total knee or a hip or a shoulder, and where those cortisone injections had gone, the tissue had changed from being this beautiful, glistening, pearly white structure to a yellow-tinged, nasty, beat-up tissue.
It's kind of interesting because we use Kenalog sometimes to break down tissue. I use it sometimes with hypertrophic scarring where you have collagen, and you do Kenalog injections into it to break down the collagen.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine in tissue
what it's doing in
the tissue. I remember even having some Kenalog injections into my throat. I had some strictures in my throat, and they put Kenalog, my esophagus, and they stuck it through. Anyway, it was not very pleasant, but they broke down that scar tissue with Kenalog. So Kenalog is something that breaks down tissue.
And I'm not totally anti-cortisone. I think it has its place, and I will still use it occasionally. But my shift, well, let me back up again. So in orthopedics, generally, you treat things until they need surgery, and then you operate. I did that for a long time. I loved it. I loved surgery. I really had a mental transformation here about 3 years ago to looking for more preventative and regenerative ways to avoid surgery and or just to feel better. So instead of just getting something operated on, oftentimes stem cells or PRP can really help you feel better and have better longevity. And stem cells in particular can really rejuvenate tissue.
So tell us, when you say PRP stem cells, what's the difference? I mean, stem cells is used kind of as a buzzword right now. And I feel like, is PRP the same thing as stem cells, or what's the difference?
Well, you're right. It's stem cells is a huge buzzword. I was in a conference about a month ago with a bunch of business owners and entrepreneurs in Las Vegas with Alex Hermosi. But when he came to highlight our business and we talked about what we do, as soon as I said stem cells, everyone's ears and eyes perked up. In fact, people came to talk to me after the meeting about stem cells. So it's a buzzword, but let's start with PRP. PRP stands for platelet-rich plasma. And what that is, we draw your own blood, we spin it down on a centrifuge, and then we basically extract out healing tissues or healing parts of the blood and inject it back into an injury site. So it's pretty good, in my opinion, for minor things like maybe some tendonitis, maybe some mild joint osteoarthritis. But stem cells really set themselves apart because not only do they decrease inflammation, improve function, decrease pain, but the big kicker here is they can actually rejuvenate tissue.
Yeah. So when we talk about stem cells, there's different ways to get stem cells. And I know there's different ways. I've seen it done through adipose, using your own fat, kind of harvesting it, kind of like liposuction, spinning it down, harvesting those stem cells through fat or adipose. Bone marrow is another way to harvest your own stem cells through, usually it's a pretty invasive procedure. We're going through the hip and harvesting those stem cells. And then there's the other way, which this is what we do, is we use mesenchymal type stem cells, which are umbilical sourced stem cells from live C-section births. So those are the ones that we have been using, correct?
Yes, and I'll break it down a little bit. So I've trained on all of these. Adipose tissue, I've done several procedures where we actually do like almost like a liposuction procedure, but women or men, it's not liposuction.
It's not
So
for fat.
it's not like, hey, we're gonna give you this lipo procedure and then put the fat back.
It's more for just harvesting.
Yeah, it's for harvesting the stem cells. So when that's done, the fat is broken down, stem cells are extracted, and they're injected back into the body, okay? Not a bad way to go, but not a great way to go, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The next way is extracting bone marrow, as Amy mentioned. That procedure is done where there are basically holes bored into the top of your hip, a big suction syringe is placed in there, and bone marrow is extracted. I am not a big fan of that because most people have more pain in their hip.
I've heard that. More pain in their hip
than the injury site that they came in for originally. And I learned this in ortho through the years. Oftentimes we would use a bone graft from the hip, and they would complain more about that than where the bone graft went. So, and the third, and what I believe is definitely the best way to get stem cells and utilize stem cells, is through umbilical cord sourced stem cells. So a newborn infant, the umbilical cord is taken. The tissue that is inside the umbilical cord is super, super rich in non-manipulated stem cells. When I say non-manipulated, these are fresh, brand new stem cells that can actually go into the body, find the target where the injury is, and adjust to that injury to help repair it. For example, cartilage loss or cartilage repair. It's excellent for that. Soft tissues like rotator cuffs, tennis elbow, plantar fasciitis. We've done all of these with good success. The reason I don't like the other sources, the bone marrow or the fat, is because you're basically, and I'll use myself for an example, I'm 54. I would get my 54-year-old stem cells, which are way less in abundance than they were when I was an infant. I get those stem cells injected back into my body, and they have been manipulated. They've been beat up. I'm just going to be bold. They're not as effective. In my opinion, with my experience, they're not as effective, and the other procedure is so easy to do with the umbilical cord-based stem cells. Someone can walk into our office. We do a consultation. I evaluate them, I look at their x-rays, and then we decide if this is right for them, and we can inject them the same day they're in the office. It's a super easy procedure. And
a little downtime too. When you're talking about the treatments, all kinds of treatments, shoulders, knees, plantar fasciitis, I know sometimes you use ultrasound to kind of utilize that space or joint space.
Correct. Yeah, so I grew up in a world, so to speak, that we really didn't have ultrasound to utilize, so it's kind of like Top Gun a little bit. So I know she's laughing, but If you think about the movie Top Gun, when we started relying on computers and everything else to make us good, like these pilots, they lost their dogfighting skills. So I grew up in an era where we didn't have an ultrasound to do every little thing. So I learned how to do it without ultrasound.
And that's why he's so good at injections. Anyway.
Well, yeah, after tens of thousands, if you're not good, you should probably get out of the game. But I do use ultrasound on occasion for joints that are hard to get into. For example, the hip joint. So to do a hip joint injection, you have to come from the front of the hip and dive deep down to a very narrow space to do the injection. So I use ultrasound for that and some other things, but for the stuff I'm super familiar with, like shoulders, knees, wrists, ankles, sometimes I won't use ultrasound because it's really not necessary.
Yeah, it's without it, so you don't need it. So it's kind of been fun how people have come in to our clinic and maybe they're set for a total knee replacement. And some people just need them. That's just the truth of it. However, there's some people that want to try non-surgical approach before they have to go in for a surgery. And it's been amazing to see people actually not go to surgery because they got relief from these treatments. And I think that's important. Yes, insurance does not pay for these treatments. However, what is it worth to you not to have to go through surgery and have your knee joint? Your knee joint will never be the same as an artificial joint.
Correct. So again, something I've become very passionate about the past few years, and I had to be convinced because of the world I grew up in. I'll give you one example. About 6 weeks ago, a lady came in who had a total shoulder scheduled, and she really, at the coaxing of her family, came in. And just to talk about it, and as we talked through it, I said, I can't promise anything. I can't promise you that this is going to make you feel like you're 16 again, and I certainly don't expect that. But what I can promise you is we will try, we will do our very best. And I do multiple procedures when I do stem cell injections, not just one and done. But her experience was pretty miraculous because she had a total surgery scheduled for her shoulder, total joint surgery for her shoulder. And after the first treatment, she was like, yeah, I've noticed a difference, but it's still pretty sore and I can't move it that great. I said, yeah, you're bone on bone. This is not going to just cure overnight. So about a month later, we did a second treatment. And about a month later after that, when I saw her back, she said, I have canceled my total shoulder because it feels so much better. And she started demonstrating to me her range of motion had improved, her strength had improved, and she just felt good. She did not want to go through this massive surgery and have 6 to 12 months of recovery. So that's one story, but I'll be honest, I've seen that a lot. Yeah. Not every time. Yeah. I don't want to tell you this is the perfect thing for everyone.
Yeah, and it's not. And it's one of those things where we set expectations, and it's not for everyone. But it's kind of interesting. A lot of people think they can only get those in Panama or Mexico. We kind of talked about that earlier in some other episodes, but how we have them here in the United States. They're FDA regulated, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
FDA regulated type stem cells, which these same companies sell to Mexico, sell to Panama, and people have to travel far away to get them. And I just feel like there needs to be more information out there on stem cells and what's offered. It's kind of been interesting with stem cells and exosomes is another topic that is becoming a little more buzzword too. Treatments for Parkinson's, multiple myeloma, some conditions
rheumatoid arthritis.
And exosomes are really more utilized through IV or systemic type injections to help with these types of conditions. So I think it's been kind of fun to see this start to build and kind of be on the forefront of it.
Yeah. So quick story again. Last week in Twin Falls, I met with this couple. I actually knew their son from PA school back in the day. They told me their son is going to Panama to get stem cell treatments. And I told them what we did, and they were like, oh, I know he's already going. He's got everything booked. Yeah. I wish he would have known this. But ironically, both of those two signed up for IV stem cell or exosome treatments. And they're like, why do we need to go to a foreign country to get this done when we can do it right here? Yeah. And Amy mentioned these are FDA registered, which means they've been through screening processes. They're safe. As long as I have been doing this, I've never seen a bad reaction or any contamination, anything of that nature.
Yeah. If you've been living with arthritis pain, there's options out there. If you're contemplating having surgery and you want to explore other options, we just like to know that there's other options out there for you. And if you have any questions, you could either DM us or call us, text us. We have all the ability and get your life back. So
Back. Speaking of backs, sorry,
Yeah.
I can't let this go. Backs. We've been doing backs for a couple of years
in
now.
fact, we just did my dad
Yeah, we did Amy's
a
dad.
couple of weeks ago, and he came in. I hadn't seen my dad in a little bit. It's been over a year, and that's my bad. But came in just kind of hunched over, walking, shuffling. I was like, wow, I didn't realize how bad he was. And Matt did some injections in his back, and over the next few days, he traveled home back to St. George where he lives. But I was like, he kept on calling me and telling Matt how much better he feels. And he's walking better, not shuffling as much and standing upright more. And he's told all his friends about it too. It's been kind of funny.
No, which is great, but really it's about quality of life. Again, quality time remaining. Let's utilize our bodies, just enjoy life. That's what stem cells I've seen, we've both had them, as we mentioned on a previous podcast, in our shoulders. It's been well over a year and we both feel great. So, if you have any questions, let us know. I love, as you may feel this, I'm pretty passionate about talking about it. So if you want to just talk about it, schedule an appointment at no charge and just come in and I'll let you know what I know from my personal experience.
Yeah. So thank you for tuning in today with Look Good, Feel Good with Matt and Amy. And if you have any questions, like Matt said, just ask. And if you have anyone that you want to share this episode and to listen to, please do. And we thank you all.
Thank you.